Tonight on CTV3 News, National Fire Service reports on explosion and combustion recorded in the Mennonite communities of Shipyard and Newland. Orange Walk couple charged for facilitating a Guatemalan woman to enter Belize illegally. And the BSAFA speaks on GOB's and BSI ASR's compromise on new legislation. These are some of the stories we have for you tonight in our newscast for Thursday, July 28, 2023.
Me encuentro recluida porque fui acusada de inhumación, exhumación de cadáveres, profanación de cadáveres y homicidio de 13 personas.
Ellos decían que era santería, nosotros decíamos que era satanería.
Yo nunca me imaginé que a mí me iban a aventar todo lo de Adolfo.
Quien jefaturaba y quien ordenaba y quien tenía el poder y el peso de decisión pues era Sara.
Good evening, with your news also simulcast on Fiesta FM 106.7. I am Joanna Rodriguez. On Monday, an inferno sent residents of Shipyard in panic mode around 5 p.m. This is after a crude oil tank exploded at the Benjamin Crane and the Sons business place located at Camp 8. Cran sustained some $200,000 in losses as a result of the blaze, which he believes could have been avoided if the operator of the oil tanker would not have left the area unattended, as the 900 gallons of crude oil was being hosed out from his tanker and transferred to the stationary tanks belonging to the company. Today, Cran's story was confirmed by the National Fire Service. According to station supervisor Kenneth Mortis, when the crude oil spilled, it ignited the fumes of a small gas pump. That caused the explosion and then the raging fire.
The situation in Shipyard that resulted in an explosion was an unfortunate one, especially seeing that the equipment they were using wasn't the appropriate type for the job required. The equipment faulted along the way, thus creating an explosion whereby the driver of the bobtail truck carrying this 9,000 gallons of crude oil, he sustained minor burn damages to his hands and feet. Fortunately for him, he was transported to the Northern Regional Hospital where he was treated and released. And the shipyard community, I must say, is grateful for the fact that the incident was a minor one and was contained or controlled rather quickly, preventing further damages. As a warning or as continuous education safety campaign by the fire department, we can only emphasize on trying to use the right tools for the job or the right equipment for the job. Again, it's fortunate the situation could have been worse. Both parties walked away with minimal damage in terms of physical damage. Unfortunately, I cannot put a price tag on the amount of crude oil that was lost in this explosion. We trust and hope that an occurrence like this does not repeat itself. However, as a National Fire Service, we are trained and responsible to respond to all these incidents once the call arrives.
So, while the firefighters are trained to respond to a fire of any magnitude, in this particular case, 66-year-old Benjamin Crane says the fire team took some 90 minutes to respond, and apparently none of the fighters knew how to handle the machine once they were at the scene. Here is Mortis on that.
I'm not so sure about the hour and a half. I mean, this is the fire department. After all, we are doomed to be always late and never have enough water. An hour and a half, in my view, is an extremely long time. However, once we arrive on the scene, we realized that combating this type of fire with pure water wasn't appropriate for the job. So we had to switch up our tactics a bit, applying foam, which then literally minimize it or extinguish the fire. Crude oil isn't a solid, so to speak. It's a flammable liquid. We try to equip all trucks with our firefighting equipment to combat both flammable liquids, such as this one, or a regular structural fire, which is a residential or some other type of fire, so to speak. It's normal. It's normal that sometimes we get the call saying that there's a truck on fire, there's a vehicle on fire. We don't always get the in-depth information as to say what type of vehicle is burning or what substance in that vehicle is burning. So of course, when we arrive on the scene, the very first thing we'll see fire. So the very first instinct is to automatically grab a hose and discharge water. And the relevant type of fuel that is burning would not be disclosed to us until we are already in firefighting mode. But it's just a matter of a few seconds step back, make the correct firefighting operation technique, and we go from there. Not knowledgeable in how to help doesn't mean that we went there with a naked eye, so to speak. We went there ignorant of the fact of what was burning. It wasn't during firefighting that we learned that it was actually flammable liquid that was being burned.
Luckily, no one suffered major injuries during the fire. As for the fatal fire in the Mennonite community of Newland that occurred on Tuesday and claimed the life of 10-month-old Sarah Sawatsky and her 3-year-old sister Anna, Mortis told the media today that while the department did not receive the distress call of a fire in that community, they have investigated the incident.
Newland is a totally different situation. Only from what we've gathered through social media and others, the fire department never did receive a call for Newland. We never did respond to Newland. That doesn't mean that our work ends there. We still have to respond. A fire happened, lives was lost. We need to conduct an investigation thoroughly as to what prompted the family to use a lighter. The amount of flammable liquid that was present to create this explosion, the close proximity. There's a lot of questions that I am hoping my team up north is currently undergoing an investigation to try and ascertain exactly what really went down. We're only picking up pieces of the puzzle, saying that they were filling a lamp with what should have been kerosene but turned out to be gasoline. I mean, it's no rocket science to say that if I'm pouring gasoline from one container to the next with a lighter, it would create such a devastating blast. It has to be a large amount. That flammable substance had to have been built up, so to speak, and then on the introduction of that flame created the explosion. So my question behind the whole thing is the amount. You know, if I if I should take a regular gallon of gasoline and then have a naked flame, is that enough to create the explosion that that particular situation went through? You know, so we need to take that information and then we need to step back, do our own testing to see the feasibility behind all of this. Like I said, we're only picking up pieces of the puzzle from what we're seeing on social media and what the police reported. So now we need to actually put the pieces together and say, well, this is the cause, and this we know that this is negligent. We're not condemning nobody. That's not our thing, you know. But we like to use all of this as a we like to take the negative and pick out something positive from it. And with that, we continue to try to educate the general populace about the dangers or the high explosive capacity of a gasoline vapor versus using a candle. I mean, or a lighter. That community has their own way of living, and that's on them. However, I trust and hope that this is an eye opener for everybody.
So we told you previously this particular incident unfolded around 7:30 on Tuesday night after Justina Sawatsky ignited a lighter to guide her daughter, 15-year-old Elena Sawatsky, as she refilled an oil lamp. This was when the container that hosted the fuel exploded, causing a frantic fire that severely burnt Elena, Jacob, and their mother Justina, but unfortunately killed Sarah and Anna, who succumbed to her massive burns around 1:15 a.m. on Wednesday morning inside the ICU at the Cage, MH. A Guatemalan found in Belize illegally and the Belizean couple accused of transporting her following her illegal entry into Belize were all convicted in the Belize City Magistrates Court this afternoon. 32-year-old Adrian Munoz of Troll Farm Village, Orange Walk District, was charged along with his wife, 42-year-old Reina Connie Gonzalez Urbina, a businesswoman of Market Lane, Orange Walk Town, for facilitating the commission of an immigration offense, to wit, illegal entry of 25-year-old Yolme Mejia, domestic of Melchor de Mencos, Petén, Guatemala. Mejia was charged with illegal entry on July 18th into Belize via the Mopan River at Benquevejo del Carmen, from which she was picked up by Munoz and Gonzalez in an orange Nissan Xterra vehicle at the town's bus terminal, along with a 17-year-old female minor. The group was picked up in Boral Boom area while on their way to Orange Walk. Appearing before Magistrate Kiana Gordon, the trio pleaded guilty to their charges. Munoz and Gonzalez were each fined $1,000 and costs of court due by August 31st, in default 6 months imprisonment each. Mejia, meanwhile, was fined $1,000 due forthwith, in default 6 months imprisonment. She was also ordered to be deported from Belize once she pays her fine or serves her prison term. According to reports, Mejia had visited Belize regularly, and this was her first time bypassing the legal port of entry at the western border. The minor was handed over to the Human Services Department, and the Xterra remains impounded by Ladyville Police pending further investigations. The Ministry of Transport, Youth and Sports is one that has seen a number of changes when it comes to its personnel over the course of the past months. First, it was former Chief Executive Officer in the ministry, Marconi Leal Jr., to exit the building after Minister Rodwell Ferguson wrote to him indicating that any expenditure exceeding $5,000 must get his approval. Right after that letter, the former CEO went on to leave, and upon his return, he found himself wearing the hat of the CEO at the Ministry of Human Development, Families, and Indigenous Peoples Affairs. Thereafter, Ian Kahl resigned from his position as the director of the National Sports Council in the Ministry of Sports. And then it brings us to the former Chief Transport Officer, Diane Vasquez. Today, the Honorable Rodwell Ferguson was questioned about the many changes, and here is his response.
I don't know if there's a failure. When I give a responsibility, I do it to the best of my ability. And if we cannot get what we want to accomplish, then we have to figure out what is the way forward. With the CEO, Mr. Marconi Leal, we were working together practically for 2.5 years, and certain things maybe that was not done based on my request or what we want to accomplish. And so I had to figure out what to do as the minister responsible. I don't want my ministry to fail. And so I had to make a decision and talk to the Prime Minister and say what will be the next course of action. So right now we have a brand new CEO, Ms. Adele Katsin Sanchez, and we have a very good working relationship.
As you heard, the minister confirms a good working relationship with newly installed CEO Adel Katsim, but it begs the question as to whether or not that relationship will last. He also responded to that question today.
I'm easy to work with, all right? And sometimes they take advantage of me for that. I can work with anybody, but once I am a manager, running a department, I have to be very stern and make sure everything runs properly and the correct way. So that is my position. I have no issue with nobody. I'm there to improve the quality of the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Transportation. That is my job.
But so then can you put to rest concerns that may have been raised in relation to who received that contract? There were allegations that the person who is behind it, I can't remember the name first, Stopper, can't remember, is related to someone close to you.
That's not true. And let me explain to you how the ministry was being run. As a minister, I do not operate every day in the activities of the ministry. That's why I have a CEO. And they are the ones who decide who to get the contract or who don't. I do not decide, I don't care. But once I know that the job is being provided and the job is done, that is my position.
So then, but could it be that there are other actors using your name who are in fact related to people close to you?
I'm ignorant to that fact.
But
the CEO runs the day-to-day activity of the ministry.
But at the end of the day, they would say that the buck stops at you. So you should be able to guarantee that things are done above board.
Let me tell you something. When I put out a letter stating that I was at least aware of anything being signed over $5,000 so I can be aware, you all criticize me. I said the minister is micromanaging. But as the minister responsible, when cabinet comes to me, I must have an answer. So I have to have an answer to make sure I can provide to the cabinet and actually to the National Assembly.
Coming up next, the Baja closely monitoring outbreak of new world screwworms in Central America. Stay tuned.
Me encuentro recluida porque fui acusada de inhumación, exhumación de cadáveres, profanación de cadáveres y homicidio de 13 personas.
Ellos decían que era santería, nosotros decíamos que era satanería.
Yo nunca me imaginé que a mí me iban a aventar todo lo de Adolfo.
Quien jefaturaba y quien ordenaba y quien tenía el poder y el peso de decisión pues era Sara.
Sign up for Smart Share Plan and save big. Whether you're a small entrepreneur starting up your business, a student on a limited budget, or a family trying to save, this is the plan for you. With unlimited SMS, calls, and data, we help you save. Get up to 5 lines for as low as $30 per line monthly, only with Smart. Sign up today at any Smart showroom or sales manager countrywide. So get your business going, share more memories with friends, and be ready for the day with Smart.
I wanted to show them something that wasn't an illusion. Something that was real. Something that they could see and touch.
Humans and dinosaurs can't coexist. We created an ecological disaster.
Ellie Sattler.
Alan Grant.
You didn't come out all this way just to catch up now, did you?
You coming or what?
That's another plane, right?
Not exactly.
Don't move.
On Wednesday, we told you about the agreement reached between the government's legal team and BSI to maintain the status quo as it relates to certain aspects of the sugar industry license to export sugar, which was challenged by BSI earlier this year. That case was to have been heard later this month. However, the decision has placed a pause on the regulations until the substantive case is concluded sometime next year. In other words, the areas of the regulations being contested will not apply to BSI until and unless a judge decides they are lawful. Today, the leadership of the BSCFA also gave their take on this new development. Chairman of the Committee of Management of the BSCFA, Fred Ortega, says that while cane farmers are not pleased with the decision, their hope is that the legislation will prevail once it is heard before the court in the coming months.
No estamos muy contentos con ello porque pues esperábamos de que el caso se escuchara. Por lo menos sabemos de que no se llevó a cabo el injunction que BSI había aplicado. Así es que lo que hicieron, quitaron lo del injunction y entonces lo llevaron lo cambiaron para otra fecha donde van a escuchar el caso completo para ver si tiene implicación constitucional, como dice BSI, a donde les afecta sus derechos constitucionales, de la cual pues lo va a decidir el juez. Sin embargo, nosotros vemos de que no hay nada en ello de que tenga alguna implicación, pero pues no estamos contentos, pero al mismo tiempo también le pedimos es algo de que no podemos meternos nosotros en lo que es la corte tiene su curso. Sin embargo, como cañeros, pues nosotros vemos de otra manera que quisiéramos de que haya una acción lo más rápido posible. Lastimosamente no se dio, pero pues lo que queremos es de que no pase más lejos de la fecha que le han puesto, y si lo pudieran acercar, pues sería mucho mejor para nosotros.
Now, while BSI-ASR maintains that certain parts of the legislation are harmful to the mill as a private business and thus harmful to the entire industry, the BSCFA does not agree.
Esta ley no tiene ninguna implicación para que lastime en nada a la industria. Más bien, le da al productor y al sector de la industria una oportunidad para llegar a conocer a dónde se va su azúcar, a quién le venden su azúcar y en cuánto venden su azúcar. Así es de que lastimar al productor no lastima a nadie, ni mucho menos a los stakeholders. Es más bien, si tú no tienes nada para esconder, no tienes nada que temer. Y esa es una versión que le tenemos que poner a BSI bien claro. De que si ellos no temen, no tienen nada para esconder, no deben de temer a nada. Todo es clarificación y ellos deben de salir en claro en cuánto están vendiendo nuestro azúcar, a quién se los están vendiendo y los cobros que nos están haciendo. Así es de que eso es lo que tiene en esta legislación, a donde provee oportunidad, y también a ellos también les da la oportunidad de que si trabajamos en armonía, trabajamos en confianza, tenemos una buena amistad.
BSI-ASR is celebrating the near record cane price recorded, which resulted in a second payment over $20. But the largest cane farmer association, BSCFA, says Canarios should be getting much more money for their cane. Chairman of the Committee of Management of the BSCFA, Fred Ortega, today chided the miller for implying that the higher payment to farmers is due to the investments made by the company, adding that the efforts have been a collective one.
Cuando tú lees los documentos que sacó BSI, ellos se aplauden a ellos mismos, y de que por inversiones que ellos han hecho, dicen que por eso estamos consiguiendo un buen precio. Sin embargo, yo creo en Norma de que esto ha sido un trabajo de que el cañero ha luchado en sí mismo en la productividad de la caña. Claro, el ingenio tiene parte que ver en ello, pero es colectivamente esto que ha sucedido. Realmente no es tanto por la inversión de ellos, sino que también es por el precio que ha incrementado mundialmente, y en realidad nosotros deberíamos de estar consiguiendo un mejor precio de lo que conseguimos ahorita, pero porque hay este mercado entre Titan Lyle y BSI, de la cual son del mismo dueño, pues ellos usan una fórmula que es el World Market Price, que es el number 11, y en eso pues determinan el pago y un poco de los mejores precios que se ha dado en los Estados Unidos y de los otros mercados, que eso ha incrementado el precio a como está. Así es de que tienen parte del beneficio de ellos, tienen parte los cañeros, pero el mayor beneficio ha sido por el incremento de precio en los mercados de afuera. Así es que eso es el que ha incrementado realmente el precio que hoy estamos consiguiendo.
And while the higher payment this year is serving to offset the reduction in production, Ortega says farmers are hoping for a better crop next year.
Ese es el efecto en que tiene porque el cañero dice, conchas, hoy que no pude no pude llenar mi cota, ahora vino este precio. Realmente pues en uno de los lados ayuda al cañero a pagar su deuda un poco más rápido, porque en vez de conseguir $10 como estábamos consiguiendo antes, pues conseguimos 20. Así es de que aunque hubo una reducción en productividad, siempre el pago compensa para que así pueda llegar a un nivel de repago del cañero. Así es de que tiene su beneficio en un lado, es cierto, en la mayoría de cañeros no pudimos alcanzar en lo que deberíamos de entregar, pero ya todos saben las razones por qué eso sucedió.
On a regular basis, commuters take on social media to rant about the lack of enough public transportation runs to move from point A to point B. In essence, perennial times is what commuters are experiencing in regards to secure a seat on a bus during peak times, and that is the mornings to get to work and the evenings to get back home. It is a stale tale that is yet to be fixed, and today the media pressed for an answer from the Minister of Transport.
Anybody who wants to apply for a bus run applies to the transport board. I don't interfere with the workers of the transport board. They are the ones who decide who should get bus run or not. We have a transport planner. So once somebody applies, that planner goes around the country and see if it is necessary, that bus is necessary to run in a particular region. You kind of want to put a bus out there and there's no money not being made, or it's overloaded, or they compete with other operators. So after the transport planner do her report to the board, then the board decide exactly what they want to do.
But what I think is being said is that workers are being left on the road, so it's not necessarily a case of application for bus runs that may be denied, or so I don't know what's happening. People are just being stranded.
Well, I guess maybe after COVID, then people started traveling more around the country. Because around the country, about 70,000 people travel per day for a very small country, but they go from one point to the next to work. So I guess the board will now look at that and figure out how they can fill the gap and make sure they put additional buses where necessary.
Baja is sending a message tonight in regards to the closely monitoring of an outbreak of New World screwworms in Central America. Recently, Panama declared a state of zoo sanitary emergency. Panama reports cases in cattle, pigs, dogs, and horses. On the other hand, Costa Rica reports a single case in a dog. The parasite can affect all mammals, and that includes us, humans. Female flies of the parasite's family and subfamily are mostly attracted to wounds, which oftentimes have exposed mucous membranes. These places are where they lay their eggs. After a period of 12 to 24 hours, the larvae emerge and feed on the skin and underlying tissue of the host. This causes a condition referred to as traumatic meiosis, which can result in death. We spoke to Baja's Roxana Alvarez, who told us what monitoring actions are placed and how each person can help in safeguarding our health.
We have changed or recategorized our risk, specifically for those countries, precisely because we would rather prevent than have to later on deal with the situation, right? As you may be aware, there are procedures to importing animals from countries all over the world. Part of that process is import conditions are set for the importation of animals into Belize. What we've done because of the situation in Panama and Costa Rica is that we've added one additional measure for those two countries, right? And that measure is actually veterinary inspection at the port of entry, meaning that the process remains the same. You apply for an import permit for an animal, we give you the conditions through which you can bring those animals into Belize, right? And this is all legal and above board. Our greatest threat is illegal importation of animals. And that is what we are trying to curtail, and we've been trying to curtail for a long time. And it becomes even more urgent now that we continue to do this, right? And that is why we reminded the public that the illegal importation of animals and animal products are a threat to not only health, safety, food security, and in reality, the livelihoods of all Belizeans, but the fact that, let's keep it out of Belize, and let's remember that prevention is the best.
It says, though with Belize having porous borders, the department depends on Belizeans to keep the country safe from the New World screwworm.
The easiest thing to do is to report that type of situation, because then we have measures that we are able to enact once a situation like that arises. And the measures might not necessarily be as, I don't want to say as harsh as people might think, but the fact remains that we need to be able to ensure, that we are safeguarding human and animal health, because it's not only about animal health, but it's also about our health as humans. And a lot of times, a simple report or a simple saying, what, I've seen this happening, and I need to let you know because it's a potential risk to our country. We are citizens of this world, and although there are borders, people move across borders. And that is why it's important that we follow certain procedures to be able to do so safely and to ensure that we maintain the health of our country, we maintain the health of our livestock, we maintain the health of our people. Right? That is one thing that we really need to keep in mind. Another thing is that these procedures are set in place for a reason, right? It's not because we just say, okay, this is the way it has to be because it has to be that. All of these processes are in place to ensure that although trade continues to be facilitated, it is safely done so.
In 1991, Belize was declared free from the now potential threat of the New World screwworm and has maintained free from the disease since then. Baja reminds the public that the illegal importation of animals and animal products remain a threat to the health, safety, food security, and livelihood of all Belizeans. Diane Vasquez was the Chief Transport Officer until July 7th, when Peter Williams took on the role of acting in that position. Transport Minister Rodwell Ferguson made the announcement during an interview with the media. Minister Ferguson confirmed that Vasquez was negotiating her contract with the ministry and an agreement could not be reached. Since then, a vacancy for the post must have been advertised for qualified candidates. Today, we asked Minister Ferguson what has happened since July 7th.
At the moment, no. The Chief Transport Officer, Ms. Dan Vasquez, term expire after 3 years. And normally after your term expire, you negotiate a contract with the Ministry of Finance. Apparently, there was not no agreement, but there was talking, and apparently she never satisfied with what was offered to her. And so she said she would not sign the contract because then she wanted X amount as the Chief Transport Officer. That is total out of my realm as the Minister of Transport. I have no negotiation with her, that is the Ministry of Finance. So far, there has been only appointment. Mr. Peter Williams is acting, and then I'm asking the public service to advertise in the public service department to see who best meet that criteria.
Over the past few weeks, there have been some reports surfacing across the country about a shortage of brown sugar in certain areas, as it seems stores are increasingly out of the commodity. During an interview with the media earlier this week, Finance Director for BSI ESR, Sean Chavarria, was questioned about this matter. While Chavarria confirmed that the production of brown sugar remains stable at the mill, there have been increasing reports of Belizean brown sugar being smuggled across the border into Mexico and Guatemala.
We can assure that there's no scarcity. We have enough we produce enough brown sugar and white sugar for the domestic market. We do know that, and we've heard reports of the price for sugar in Mexico and Guatemala being much higher than Belize, in some cases about 3 times higher than what we're selling sugar for. And we know as well from past experience that what that could lead to is a matter of contraband. So they would take up the sugar here and contraband it across the border and sell it where they could get better prices. So it's something that we do have to monitor and observe so that we don't create shortages in the market. But from a production standpoint and what we have right now in our warehouses, we have more than enough sugar to satisfy the local market.
Belize has been experiencing high volumes of motor vehicle traffic accidents on its roads. So, what is causing these accidents? Can it be that drivers are using electronic devices like cell phones when on the road and become distracted? Recently, the Brazilian administration has been taking this into consideration and are pondering on the need to create laws when it comes of the use of electronics while behind the driver's seat. The idea is being contemplated, even though not much has been said about how GOB would be able to forensically analyze a mobile handset to ascertain a timeline of activity on the device to determine if the device was used prior or during an accident.
As a government, we have to put laws in place to at least help support our citizens. So it's not an enforcement that it is critical, because if you can reduce the amount of traffic accidents in the country, then better for all of us, especially for families when they lose loved ones. And so we're saying then, when you use electronic devices, sometimes you have different connections that you can connect directly to your ear, then you have to be on the phone. That might be the way to go. But imagine you are driving and you lose consciousness and you're on the phone and you get into an accident. It catches me sometimes. So you can catch any Belizean in this country.
What catch you sometimes?
No, sometimes I'm on the phone. All right? And then
And you get distracted.
you get distracted because then you are on the phone and then you lose consciousness on the highway. So it's a very good.
Not losing consciousness.
Not conscious, I mean, just distracted.
But before that happens, there would be consultations, right?
Yes, normally there's a house committee, and then the house committee open for consultation. People can come in and listen and make their suggestions.
Today, the Council of Agriculture Ministers of Central America is meeting to analyze the plan of work in the agriculture sector for the second half of this year. The session is presided by Oscar Guardado Calderon, Minister of Agriculture and Livestock of El Salvador, President pro tempore of the Council, and Lucrecia Rodriguez, Executive Secretary. The work session will allow Ministers of Agriculture of the Central American Integration System, CICA, to review the actions of the environmental and agriculture sectors in the process of negotiations on climate change. The ministers will also discuss the participation in the Latin America and the Caribbean Climate Week COP28 side event under the coordination of the Central American Commission on the Environment and Development, CCAD, as well as validation of the Animal Health Project. The ordinary meeting is being held in El Salvador and is a preparatory session to the intersectoral session on agriculture and the environment and the high-level dialogue for the Mano a Mano initiative. Both are being held within this week. Ministers of Agriculture will participate in a joint meeting with the Council of Ministers of the Environment of SICA. Belize is represented at the meeting by Servo Loaiza, CEO in the Ministry of Agriculture, since the Minister of Agriculture, Food Security and Enterprise, Jose Abelardo May, is at a meeting of agriculture ministers of the executive of ICA, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture in Costa Rica. And that's the news. We invite you to join us for another newscast on Friday, July 21st, here on CTV3 and Fiesta FM 106.7. Remember that to read a text version of the news, you can visit our website at ctv3belizenews.com. You can also log on to our Facebook page for current stories at facebook.com/CTV3belizenews or our YouTube channel at CTV3 News BZ. Remember to wash your hands and remain safe. From all of us here at CTV3 News, thank you for watching and listening. Good night.